So it's, well, I'm excited about it, and I want to share that excitement with all of you.
We're excited.
So, you know, we're one of 6 now Firewise communities in Sonoma County. So it's starting to grow a little bit. Marin County has 72 Firewise communities, and it's half as big as Sonoma. So they started it earlier, and they're just running with it. So it's not easy to do. There's a lot of requirements to pass to get in it. You have to do the CWPP, which I'm sure we've expressed just how much hard work that was for a bunch of people. And so I would like you all to stand up, please. Okay. And give yourselves a hand for all the hard work you guys have been doing. It looks amazing around here. Absolutely amazing. And now I'd also like you to turn around, and if you don't know the person behind you or next to you, introduce yourself. Just do it. You know me though.
Hi, Andrew. Hi, nice to see you. Hi. Hello, hello.
Okay, that's it. All right. Good. It looked like you actually met some people. Good job. Excited about that. Okay. All right. You get each other's number. You carry on the conversation. So, you know, it's through neighbors, helping neighbors. The reason that I had to do that is because it's really important that we know our neighbors. It's only through neighbors helping neighbors that we're going to be able to survive the next emergency, whatever it is. So I'm about to do a little Firewise presentation, short, and I want to find out how many people here know what Firewise is. Put your hand up. Okay then, I'm glad I brought the little presentation. So, okay, this is going to be a recap for those of you know it, and an introduction for the others. So, let's see here. That's just the agenda of the meeting. Okay, here's the certificate of recognition that we got when we first were approved. We have community signs, which are here and are going to be up on the roads soon. I went looking for poles and couldn't find poles, so I was told to use wood, but then I thought, no, that's not a Firewise thing. So I'm going to look for real pole. Okay, so let's see. Are we all up and going? Okay. So let's start with the benefits of becoming Firewise. Well, I feel that the biggest one is feeling prepared during fire season, taking less stress out of our lives, that we've done what we can, that we're doing what we can, and our neighbors are, and our community is safer and somehow more defensible. And I believe that to be already true, although there's much more to be done. It's also a requirement for some of the grants that we go after. It's a recognized, Firewise is a recognized designation by some of the people that are issuing the grant, Outlier, different people. So, so we're hoping that that'll give us an edge for getting the money, because there's so many people looking for the money now. People are getting more together and starting codes of their own, and so there's a lot more people vying for the same grants. So, and the other is that the insurance companies are starting to take notice. There's one company, I can't remember the name, United something, that is already giving discounts for being Firewise, being part of a Firewise community. And the insurance is looking for ways to figure out how to insure us. And, And if our community is actively engaged in fire protection, that's what they're looking for in the way of being insurable. So, okay, so this is so just 6 FireWise requirements, and it takes to 6 out of many more. For one, you have to create a FireWise board. Well, I was kind of gung-ho and really kind of skipped that part. I was the FireWise board for a minute. And then I got Marshall and what's her name at the county fire safe Roberta McIntyre. Anyway, the 3 of us on the board, and I would like to have more community involvement in this on the board, which is just basically prioritizing projects, figuring out with meetings, educational opportunities, that kind of thing. So if anybody's interested in helping out a little bit, it's easy. I mean, it's fun actually. So, because anyway, it just is. You feel like a hero if you make it work. So, I would love that, some help with that. You need to complete a wildfire risk assessment, which we did as part of our CWPP. They have their own formula for that, which we had to sort of fit our stuff into their formula, to create an action plan, which was part of the CWPP too. And so we can share that plan with you later in the meeting. Now this is a good one. Everybody in the community has to invest a minimum of $25.43 per home per year. Okay, $25 a year, which is like nothing. So that's not good enough for me, but it's good enough for them. And as part of that, so volunteers hours also substitute for the $25. If you volunteer 1 hour, that takes care of your $25. So there's more to that, and you can read about that on their website if you're interested. I have to have annual FireWise education events. I'm kind of including this in that because we're educating you about, your zone number, for example, other things. Anyway, and then you have to submit the online application, which was a nightmare project, but with Jan's help, and we got that done. And anyway, so that's it. It was daunting at the time, but in hindsight, it was no problem. So the risk assessment, which is sort of a big deal, and figuring out what we're gonna spend our grant money on, what the projects are, how to prioritize them. You got to identify the fire history, hazards. These things will guide our priorities and activities. They have a FireWise template for doing that, which is a little cumbersome, but not a problem either. And of course, partnering with our fire department. So they ask that we maintain a 3-year action plan that's updated every year. It prioritizes the projects, the events we're going to have, the investments we're going to make, whatever homeowner actions we're going to do or are doing or educate you about. We haven't really gotten into home hardening as far as educating people, and that'll be kind of the next thing we do. I think everybody's pretty clear on the defensible space at this point. From the looks of the sides of the roads, it looks like everybody's got that down. So I say, anyway, okay. So here's another thing. So we're supposed to be recording as a FireWise requirement or suggestion. We're supposed to be recording what we spend, how much money this community is spending on fire protection. So I'm gonna be sending around a survey, not a survey, but a questionnaire, not that either, I can't think of the word. But a form for you to fill out that, where you can let me know, and I will log all that and tally that, of how much work you've done in the past year. You can do it on a 6-month basis, you can tell me however you want to tell me, but I'd like to be able to, at the end of the year, tabulate what people have done here. How much you've removed, what you removed, how you removed it. Did you burn it? Did you hire a chipper? Did you do it yourself? So it's kind of, the more information the better. And how much did it cost? What did you pay to have your house hardened, or what did you pay to have the trees removed? Whatever you did. Yes?
Terry, if we put together that information, could you share how that would help, how does that help us as a community, I guess, to get more funding or?
What, knowing this?
Yes.
Yes, it helps us direct the projects, for starters. It helps us, well, it helps them figure out how much on a state level is being done. I mean, how much acreage are we treating in our area? So, and that's just for statistics, I think, for them. For us, it's a way of knowing where the work's been done, where it still needs to be done.
Can I add something to that, Terry?
Yeah.
It also helps the people that are doing it and people that are considering it. They can ask the people that are doing it who they've used, what contractors they've used, the cost, and everything as well. So I find it really helpful to know how people are doing it. They can share it within the community so that we can look.
Yeah, and it's good for yourself to know what you're doing and spending. So if you were to sell your home, for example, you could, tell them how much you've done, and and maybe even tip them off to how much they're going to need to do. So, anyway, so I hope you all can, help me out with that and fill those out. I'm just gonna, it's not perfect. We're not looking for perfection, and it's not a contest. Just anything you've done. And for trees, Marshall's going to talk about the tree grant and money and dead and dying trees. That's a little more specific. We're going to want to actually locate the trees, the dead and dying trees, and geolocate them, and mark them and prioritize them for removal when we do get some money. So you can hear about, you'll hear about that later. Okay, and as part of that, I hope that neighbors, can identify projects that possibly they need to do with their neighbor, maybe property lines, fences, sides of the road, whatever it is. We encourage you to work with your neighbors if you can. And the goal, make every home in our community defensible. And that, my friends, is it. So, are there any questions about Firewise?
You mentioned $25 for contributing time. How is that to be handled? How are you going to go about collecting that or letting people know about that?
Well, that's a good question. I figure pretty much everybody's, I could add up the total. I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I could drive around and see who hasn't done anything. It might be obvious, but I have a feeling everybody's done something. So, and all they have to do is volunteer for an hour if they haven't, or they don't want to, or for some reason, I don't know. So, hopefully, all the neighbors, that we'll get to everybody that's not currently engaged. We'll get them engaged somehow. So, we'll keep working at that. And that's it for me. So, for this presentation, okay, that I'm going to leave to somebody else. I'll leave that to Marshall. So right now, I would like to introduce Carleon Stafford from Permit Sonoma Fire Prevention District, I believe.
Division.
She's going to talk about the assessments that happened, and, yeah.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
How are y'all?
Good.
So, my name is Carol Young, and I currently work for everybody's favorite county agency, Permit Sonoma. Actually, truthfully, we're doing a lot of great stuff. But I come to this position at Permit Sonoma after many, many years of doing fire prevention. I started about 18 years ago doing outreach and education through Fire Safe Sonoma, with whom y'all work to get your FireWise designation. During those years, from 2004 to 2017, the biggest challenge I had was convincing anybody that there wasn't a magic bubble around Sonoma County that stopped at the Lake County border, right? Nobody quite believed that we had the risk that we had. And myself and a number of local fire folk, primary amongst them your awesome Marshall Turbeville, spent a lot of time doing outreach and education in the communities going, hey all y'all, this is coming. And people would just sort of, fall asleep and think that, no, it's Lake County. I didn't understand. So then in 2017, everything changed in my world. Not least of which, it was the first time I ever had access to, a real job doing what I do. Up before that, I was always contracting and going from grant to grant to try to keep doing the stuff that we were doing, and it was really hard. And now all of a sudden we're in a completely different world. After 17, I was working for Sonoma County Fire Prevention at the time, and that gave us access to FEMA hazard mitigation grant funding. So that's if you've had a presidential disaster, FEMA will come along and give you lots and lots of money to do stuff as identified in your hazard mitigation plan. And that's where a lot of the work that we're doing now came from. And one of the first grants that we wrote was the Wildfire Adapted Sonoma County project, which was a project that I had been thinking about for many, many years. And it focuses first on the most important elements for keeping houses from igniting. And those are the fuels within 100 feet, commonly known as
Defensible space.
10 years ago, everybody would have just gone. Defensible space, and the second element, which I personally believe is even more important, is what we call structure hardening, which is closing up vulnerabilities on the structure itself that make it vulnerable to ignition by wildfire. Now, one of the most important things that you need to really, really get about wildfire home ignition is that about 80% of wildfire home ignitions are caused by embers. About 80% are caused by embers. Those are things that are the size of a pea, roughly. Grain of sand to a dinner plate, right? And you guys have now, everybody's seen that. When I say embers, everybody is going like, I know what you mean. 80% of home loss is because of those embers, which means that if you're focusing really heavily on fuels outside of that 100-foot zone, you're still missing 80% of the risk, which is that a small ember is going to blow in, get on a bush, blow in through an unprotected vent to ignite your home, even though the fire is still miles and miles away. And that's why I'm so focused on that near-home vegetation and near-home and on-home structure hardening piece of the puzzle. Frankly, this is a much more difficult thing to do than large-scale wildland fuels treatments, which are also important. absolutely critical. I'm not saying they're not, but to keep houses from igniting, we have to address the houses first, and then that will greatly help. And then those wildland fuel breaks, which are great for habitat, water system, everything, will then help us to mitigate, to lessen the strength of those fires in the wildland areas. But on high severity days, fire's going to blow right through those fire breaks and still produce embers. And so our houses are still vulnerable, even if we have good fuel breaks around the community. So doing both of those things is absolutely critical. And that's what the Wildfire Adapted Sonoma County project attempts to do, is to look at those near home vulnerabilities as our first priority. Now, a couple of background things. Some of you might have heard about the BRIC grant that the county just got, that $50 million, $37 million, depending on which side you're reading about it. And that is also, it's another Permit Sonoma grant that we put in going, what the heck, let's ask for all the money in the world. And by golly, it was the only wildland project that was funded by FEMA in this first round of BRIC. It's a $37 million proposal, which will do a lot of the same things that the Wildfire Adapted will do, which we'll talk about a little more. In addition, that also has near community calming zones, fuel breaks, shady fuel breaks, whatever you want to call them. And that target, it focuses on only 3 target areas for actual project implementation. And those areas are Larkfield Wikia, Guerneville Rio Nito, and another project area in the Pengrove area. We chose those 3 project areas because they're extremely diverse in terms of the fuels components in them, very, very different. Each of those areas has a combination of dense urban vegetation, spread out, dense urban building, spread out housing, and wildland areas abutting. And what we really want to do with this project is not only accomplish the treatments that, you know, ideally we could keep Larkfield from burning again, wouldn't that be awesome, right? But it will also provide us with a lot of funds for education and outreach, for really applying the best available science to those projects so that we really know more what really is going to work to circle up the problem in those communities, which will then translate out, because that's why we have those 3 very diverse landscapes. So we're actually pretty excited about that project. A few things you should know about it. It was announced by the president, so everybody thinks it's real. But actually the status right now is pending further review, right? So what that means is that FEMA is going to get back to us with a whole lot of really difficult and annoying questions in September or October. It'll take us several months to get those straightened out. After that, they'll say, well, I don't know, I guess we can have these funds, even though the president already announced them. And then there's an 18-month period where we're setting up how we're going to do what we're going to do, and that implementation starts after that. So we won't be seeing any projects on the ground for a while on that project. And I just wanted to throw that out there because there's a lot of misinformation floating around about that project now. I just wanted to kind of talk about that. The other thing that I'm working on in my spare time is the Sonoma County Community Wildfire Protection Plan. I know you just did one for Geyserville. Yay! Which I'm super excited about, and I can't tell you how excited I am to have you guys have hit that Firewise. I love Firewise, I love that program, it's great. Good for you. The countywide CWPP, what we're trying to do with that is bring everybody's projects into the same place. So that when somebody's going, I don't know, we got some spare money, what's the best projects in the county? We've got a place where they're all listed together so that anybody who has that kind of funding doesn't have to go, I don't know, we have to talk to Geyserville and Rio Nito, and you know, we want them all in one place. So Marshall's entered a bunch of your projects already, but I really would like to encourage all y'all to chime in on the process. Where we're at now is we're starting to draft up the plan, and then we'll be having public review, and really heavily encourage everybody to communicate with us through that process, because the more input we get for this community wildfire protection plan, the better it will be. So just throwing that out there too. I'll make sure and send any communications to the COPE group so it'll go out on your email list, and Marshall too. Any questions about any of those things before I do a deeper dive into the wildfire adaptive program?
And I don't know whether this is just what you talked about or whether it's coming up, but on the assessments that you sent out.
It's coming up.
Okay. Got it.
Okay, so about those assessments. First, I want to introduce Tyler over here in the corner. This is Tyler Briggs, who is my right-hand man for the assessments on the Wildfire Adaptive Program. So Tyler's been out doing a lot of the assessments, and he's also the guy who answers questions and phone calls and all of that stuff while I'm busy doing, eating bonbons and all those things that I do most of the time. So Tyler's here and can answer any questions as well. Tyler, interrupt me anytime as we talk about this with thoughts that you have. So the Wildfire Adaptive Program, again, the deal is let's try to circle up defensible space and structure hardening and provide incentives for people to do the work that needs to be done. That's the overall zeitgeist of it. The assessments have been done for Geyserville. How many of you got one of those? God, that's almost all of you. So most of you are in the project area. There are for that, and Tyler has these and we'll pass these out. There are 10 project areas. Oh, thank you, dear, because, I get distracted. There are 10 project areas for this throughout the whole county. And those project areas were chosen based on a couple of metrics. One was proximity to areas that are high or very high fire severity zones per CAL FIRE. And the second metric we applied to that was high or very high and with dense housing, right? Yeah, you can.
Or I can zoom it out how
Yeah. Yeah. And so that was our first cut for where do we want to do this. And then our second cut was getting on the phone and calling up the local fire chief and going, dude, what wakes you up at night? And Marshall said, this wakes me up at night. He was a bad guy to ask. Some of the other guys sleep, but not Marshall. So that's how we chose these project areas. And we're sort of starting off. Our first batch was Fitch Mountain, Geyserville, and Cloverdale. And Tyler and the gang are currently out doing the second batch, which is Lower Russian River in the Forestville area, Occidental, and Kenwood. And then our last are down in the Sonoma Valley and a few stragglers here and there, including the footprint of the glass fire, which was our largest project area chosen because we knew that was going to go, and boy, did it ever. So we're having to figure out what kind of incentives we offer to them in a place that's already burned, because this is a pre-fire mitigation grant, right? So that's kind of what we're doing now. So we're done with your assessments. These assessments that we did for the Wildfire Adapted are not a code compliance inspection. This form that you got is not going to trigger my people to come out with a hammer and throw a bunch of fines and penalties on you. And I set that up that way because I want people to be happy that our assessors are coming and to get the work done through the incentives. So that was my idea and why I set these up as a non-code compliance project. Permit Sonoma also does defensible space inspections, which are a code compliance program. And you may get a second code compliance inspection following up on ours. Are you going to do that, Marshall? Or have you done it already?
We were going to do it after this, so there's no confusion. So the assessment is not an inspection, and the assessment covers a lot more than just defensible space. Government agencies pretty much only enforce defensible space. And so once this assessment's done, we will go through and do the normal, we've done it the last 2 years, the normal defensible space inspection. But we didn't want to confuse it by doing both simultaneously. And in theory, if you've met the assessment, then you're probably going to pass an inspection. Just the assessment's also going to talk to you about your structure as well.
Thus far, we've done all of the homes on our list in the Geyserville area. Just FYI, we had about 63 fails, or needs further improvement, I should say, because you can't fail a non-code compliant. Needs further improvement, 63, passed 38, and there were 2 that had gates or another reason why the assessors couldn't get to the property to assess it. So that's actually, it sounds bad, 61 to 36, but it's actually, that's not too bad. That's about what we get typically countywide, is about a little less than half fail, a little more than half fail. So we're done with those. You should have gotten a copy of the inspection on site. If you have an unimproved property, you're going to get that assessment in the mail. And the deal is that if you have things that need further improvement, we can provide $3,700 in incentive funding to get those projects done. We're starting up the application process for that now, and how that will work is that you'll go to our website, and I really recommend you do this. Oops. Let's see, is that?
And I'd just like to say that while she's looking up that, it's really actually a better thing that you end up with more things for improvement on our list, because that qualifies you for more of these grant funding rebate incentives in the future. So our inspections are basically meant to prioritize things that you can do in your defensible space. Definitely prioritizing things that are within that 0 to 5 foot bubble, that kind of golden zone of non-combustibles that really affects your property. So kind of the more things we can get on there, the more things eventually, you know, it's better basically, because there's more options in the long run.
So one of the things that we're really pushing hard on for these defensible space incentives is the 0 to 5 foot non-combustible zone. That's not yet part of code, it's coming. We're looking at 2022 still, Marshall? Yeah. So right now that's not part of the defensible space regulations of the Public Resource Code, but it will be. So if you can apply some of this funding to get that done before your next real code compliance inspection, you'll be way out ahead of the game. So that is really what I'm trying to really encourage people to do. In that 0 to 5 foot zone, it's remove combustible mulches, remove plants so that only well-maintained, low-growing plants exist in that space. They aren't under vents. There's a list of stuff that's on your inspection form that you can take a look at for that. So that would be a really good thing to ask for. But what I would really encourage you to do is to go to the website and click the little button that says sign up here for SoCo updates. And that'll pop you into a system, so we'll have your email, and when we get the application period open for the incentive fundings, we will send you emails so you'll know when to jump on that. So I'd highly encourage you to do that. That would be great. Just a word of warning, this is federal funding administered by the County of Sonoma. This is not going to be an easy process, and it's going to take a while between when we get the project on the ground and when you actually get your reimbursements for the work that you've done. But at the end of the day, $3,700, it's worth a little time and energy. How the process will work is that if you will submit a basic application saying, yeah, I think I want to do that 0 to 5 foot zone. We'll send your address to FEMA to do NEPA, it's the National Environmental Protection Agency clearance, and we'll do CEQA clearance. When we get the clearance for NEPA and CEQA, then you'll get another thing from us saying, yay, you're clear. Then we'll have a longer application with more exacting project descriptions. That's a contract with the county. You'll sign that. You hire a contractor, they do the work, you pay them, we reimburse you hopefully pretty quickly in that. That reimbursement, I'm really hoping that's not a big, slow county process. Yeah.
So, two questions. What happens since your assessment came out? Some of us have already jumped on and we didn't call and find out that you're in the process of getting this organized. And what is your perceived timeline that will, is it going to be like 1 year, 2 years, for all of that to hopefully?
So we're hoping that the, oh,
So I think the question was, the assessment already occurred, Linda already did some of the work, I think, and the question was when would the county funding kick in via the federal funding? I think that was the question.
so the deal is, remember the thing about NEPA and CEQA? We can't give you a dime for anything that hasn't been cleared by NEPA and CEQA. Unfortunately, I would love it if we could say, oh yeah, you have your receipts, you did the work, thank you, we know you did it, I would love that. This is federal money. So there is no retroactive funding. So the only way that you can get those reimbursement funds is if you hire the contractor after you've signed the contract with the county, and then you get the work done. But there's no retroactive because you haven't cleared federal or state guidelines. We're hoping to open the defensible space application period within the next, I'd say, month or two. And then I'm going to talk more about the structure hardening side in a second.
What is the website that we should go to?
socoadapts.org, and that's on this flyer that,
It's on the table, actually.
yeah, Tyler will leave these on the table. You can take as many as you want. socoadapts.org.
So the question is about the website, socoadapts.org. I think I'll work with Terry to get this PowerPoint posted somewhere or shared or emailed out. That'll have an active link in it too to go to this website as well.
Unfortunately, this sounds a little bit like a incentive to do nothing right now, until somehow there's this bureaucratic morass that gets solved. And those of us who have dealt with bureaucratic organizations have skepticism about whether there will ever be definitive guidance in terms of how properly go about to do stuff that gets reimbursement.
Your incentive is maybe that your house isn't going to burn down. You know, what can I tell you? This is a federal grant, it's federal money, it comes with 1 million miles of strings and peanut butter. And we're moving as fast as we can. It's not an instantaneous process. The state is calling me up going, how in the heck are you doing this? This is a really difficult thing to do on an administrative level. And I would love to just go, yeah, I got a checkbook right here. Go forth, do what you need to do. But it's a pilot program. And you guys are the pilot of a pilot, I hate to say. Being in my first batch, you're the ones who are the pilot of the pilot. And it's slow and frustrating. I apologize for that. I'm not going to give the money back to FEMA. So let's, do what we can to move forward. And if you have concerns, feel free to contact us. But know that I am hampered by a federal grant, which until you've known the joys, you don't know the joys.
On the rules as they become, or the assessment, as those become actual rules or codes, how draconian are they going to be? Because the assessor that came to our property, which is rural, and was built in the early 70s with fruit trees that were planted in that same time. Those fruit trees are about 4 feet from our house that we renovated in stucco, and yet he told us to clear cut all the trees.
That doesn't sound right.
I said it was crazy, but he bragged about how he clear cut his 2 acres in Windsor when he bought it, because that's, he said firemen hate trees. I said, that's ridiculous. Everything else he said just went over my head, because I was too angry. So I just wondered, was he wrong? Because then I heard later that needed. I even said I would trellis the trees away from the house. You know, build that, and I can do that. I actually already started on one. But he just seemed adamant that we had to cut.
Yeah, I would love to talk with you, and we can, maybe we can grab some time when we're done.
Sure.
That sounds, fruit trees are not usually on my heavy hit list.
Right.
So, but as far as the stucco is not enough for the 5 foot, you also want the 5 foot. So that's, I would still maintain that 5 feet, but stucco is great, but it's one of 6 priorities for structure hardening. Are there any more questions, or can I morph into structure hardening? So the structure hardening assessments, we're really hoping that they'll start up by the end of the year. It's sounding to me like those assessments are going to be a couple of hours with the assessor on site to look at the building. I'm trying hard to hook up with an awesome contractor, woman who was one of the founders of Firewise, who has built the whole program for the city of Boulder and the county of Boulder, and it's awesome. And so we should have all of that in line here in the next short time. And then you will sign up for a structure hardening assessment. We're not going to do that to everybody in the project area. You have to sign up for that. So that's another reason to go to the website and sign in, because when we're starting to throw those out there on the ground, that's when you'll want to dive into that. For structure hardening, the priorities on a general level are roofs, eaves and vents, windows, decks, and finally, 6 of 6 is siding. And all of those things, to some greater or smaller degree, will be fundable by the project. The incentive for structure hardening is $8,000. If you're getting a new roof, clearly that is not going to cover a new roof, but it will give you a pretty good discount. So it's just a way to think about it. I think what we're really, again, going to encourage for the structure hardening is the 0 to 5, and vents are going to be our first heavy priorities for those projects. Projects will be taken on a first come, first served basis, and then by applicability to what the assessors said, what your highest risks are. But mostly it's in first come, first served, because that's what FEMA told us we had to do. So it's not based on income or risk, it's just based on first come, first served, and does your project fit into our parameters? And that's true for both defensible space and structure hardening. Okay, any questions on that? You guys are looking crankier than
Just for clarity, real quick, on these areas throughout the county and specific to what part of Geyserville, it's not all the Cope area, it's not all the Vineyard Club area. There was an analysis done about structures and distance of structures and the wildland interface, and that's how that was derived. So you're seeing now what was planned out, I think before Kincaid actually, was put in like in 2018, this grant. And now there's new grants going in for like 3 to 4 years from now. So things are always evolving. That's how this area was originally defined. So recognize the pocket fire, but not necessarily the Kincaid fire. So, and as you just heard, you guys are the pilot of the pilot. And I think some of the 37 million that's coming is going to do more of this in other parts of the county. So this is, either way I look at it, helping people build in a flood zone, elevate their houses around Geyserville. Now we're trying to do that for the wildland, and we're really at the leading edge of it, so it's frustrating too.
And I do apologize for the frustration y'all are feeling, but know that we're swimming as fast as we can to circle up what is in fact an extremely difficult problem to circle up. You know, I was talking about roofs. I was on a conference with the state folks who are trying to do this work the other day, and someone raised their hand and goes, well, Caroleon, have you thought about this? What if you tell someone you're going to replace their roof, and the contractor goes up there and rips off the roof deck, and underneath it, everything there is rotten? Now what? property owner can't afford to do the project anymore because the price just tripled. They're only getting $8,000 for you, and their roof's been ripped off. How are you gonna deal with that? That's the level of complexity that we're dealing with. So I understand the frustration that you guys are having, but I'm telling you, this is a heavy lift, and we're one of the first places in the country to do this work. So bear with us. Tell us when you're frustrated. Nicely is better. Because I look tough, but I'm really sensitive, actually. And we'll work with you to make it all work. But do know that this is not an easy thing to pull off.
Do we schedule our own assessments, or are they just being done?
The defensible space assessments, you just get them, you've already got it, if you're in the project area.
Okay.
The structure hardening, if you're in the project area, you have to go to the website, click on that little let me know when you're starting this, for God's sake, Caroleon. And then we'll work to schedule with you.
Got it, thank you.
Over here, yeah. So you mentioned that the new ordinance coming into effect in a couple of years. Is that in draft? Can we see it so we know what to expect?
I don't think that's in draft, and while we're talking, the question was, there's the new ordinance for the 0 to 5 foot non-combustible zone, which is going to become part of Public Resource Code 4291, which is what governs defensible space.
Yes, but just to rephrase the question, it's the state law. When is the state law regarding defensible space going to be revised to talk about that the zero, whatever, zone 0, right up against your house? And that since it's a state law, it's Public Resources Code 4291. You guys have heard about the county ordinance, which is chapter 13A. So it's PRC, Public Resources Code 4291. You could probably Google it and find it. I'll go see if I can find it. There's a website called LEG-Info, L-E-G Info. You can go search it there. So it's working its way through that process. And all indications are it'll be applicable in 2022. So I don't know if that's going to be January 1st or July 1st of 2022.
Thank you.
And that'll be state law. So that'll be everywhere in the 31 million acres of state responsibility area, but not necessarily downtown Geyserville. Chapter 13A probably will get updated, but 13A has been so darn confusing because it's morphed already twice in 3 years. So I don't think they want to mess with it now until it's in alignment with the state law. So it's consistent everywhere.
And Chapter 13A is the defensible space regulations from the county for the areas that are not in the state responsibility area, which is known as local responsibility area. You have a little up here, not a lot, you're mostly state responsibility area in this district.
Correct. For everyone in the hills, your state responsibility area. If you're down on the east side or west side of River Road, Moody Lane area, that would be local responsibility area. Downtown Geyserville is local responsibility area. But this is super confusing, and that's why the county law and the state law need to be as similar as possible to reduce this confusion.
And really, I agree, and we've tried. The big thing to understand about 13A and how it impacts all of you, even in the SRA, is that a local code can supersede a state code. In other words, if a local code is bigger and stronger than the state code, then you can enforce that in the SRA. And the place where that exists for 13A is in unimproved parcels. So when 4291 was written for defensible space regs back in the day, it was written by the Board of Forestry not to protect the house from the wildland fire, but to protect the forest from the house fire. Which made sense. It was the Board of Forestry. It was before we were losing thousands of structures every year. It made perfect sense. But that's really changed in our world. But because of that, if there's no house, the house isn't going to burn the forest down, right? So PRC 4291 does not address unimproved parcels. 13A does. We're hoping that we can eventually make those requirements a little more stringent than they are now. But right now, at base, what 13A will ask you to do on an unimproved parcel, that's a parcel with no structures on it, is 10 feet from a neighboring house and 10 feet from roadsides or driveways on private roads. And that really needs to be at least 30. Napa demands 100, Marin demands 100. So in other words, if you own an unimproved parcel, you would have to provide for 100 feet of defensible space for the parcel next door. A lot of controversy about that, but.
I was gonna say just one thing, as far as some people might be confused as far as what the defensible space guidelines are for their property, SRA, LRA. Your forms that you have for these inspections are already taking care of that. So the forms have been tailored to reflect basically you're an LRA, these are what we're looking for, or you're an SRA, and these are what we're looking for. And then as far as the future codes go for the recommendations that we have on all the improved forms, those pretty much are going to be the guidelines. So when we come out here and we do these assessments, what we're looking at and taking care of and going, by the way, future down the road, these are going to be regulations. We're going to basically have you covered as far as that 0 to 5 non-combustible zone that they're talking about in the future here.
Questions? Great, well, feel free to communicate with us. We really want this to work. Did you have a question in the back?
Yeah, about the map, since it's been flashing in front of us, the difference between the blue and the orange lots, I'm just curious.
Improved and unimproved.
Okay.
Does it have a structure on it, or is it just, yeah?
Simple enough.
Feel free to communicate. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Am I up, Terry?
Yes.
Back into this.
Well, actually,
Do you want to
maybe
do that?
Linda would like to talk about,
Evacuation zone?
your zone, our zones. That was a huge change, but yeah, this is a better time.
Hi, I'm Linda Schroeder.
Linda
Have
Schroeder.
lived here for 28 years. Don't let the accent fool you. I just haven't prepared anything to talk about. I just did this. And there might be some of you here that are, this is the Vineyard Club area. And so where most of us, I think, fall under this evacuation zone number, but there might be some people, like I don't think the Rinnies, for instance, and Harris, yeah, in a different one, right? So you need to go onto the Sonoma County evacuation zone map, and there's the website here, to see where your house is. You can actually plug in your actual address, and it will pop up and give you exactly your evacuation zone. We are also putting together wallet-size cards that we will be handing out to everybody, hopefully in the next month. Mill Creek already has this, so you'll be able to write on there your evacuation zone. It'll have all of your emergency information that you need right there. So if you're running out of your house in the middle of the night, you don't have to remember where you put stuff. If you got your wallet with you, it's all in your wallet. But also know where your neighbouring zones are in case they're on evacuation and you're on standby, or even they're on standby. You're the next one. Just know how far that away that is and what your status is. But please go on and double check. This is just a rudimentary map just to give you an idea of what evacuation zones are. Please go on and check where your house is on this map and know what your zone is. I think that's it.
Thank you.
And then real quick to tag on to Linda's, this is the online interactive map if you guys want to check out the evacuation zone. So what's shown over there on that printed map is zone 2C7 or SON for Sonoma, because they're going to try to make these maps eventually statewide. It's called Zone Haven is the software for that. Sonoma County's not there yet, but it's eventually going to be statewide. So you're 2C7 if you're west of Ridge Oaks Road, east of the Russian River itself, and then that other part, Margie, Coyote Ridge and such, you guys are 2C8. So you guys are becoming numbers, not names. No, I'm just joking. So, you know, when you guys get this very short text, whether it's the wireless emergency alert, you might see this stuff in the Nixle. We are still going to try to describe it as west of Ridge Oaks, east of the Russian River, south of, I forget, Highland Ranch. We're still going to try to describe it that way, but they can't put that amount of characters, text in those, or that amount of words in a text sometimes. So that's why we've gone to these zones pre-established, so we're not making them up on the fly. So if there's problems, like maybe Fox Ridge should be a divider, we need to feed that back up to the sheriff's office. Ultimately owns this, they control this. So there's possibility that, you know, this is first generation, changes can be made in the future to make this better. So it just allows us, if we got a fire like the Pocket, like the Kincaid, moving quickly, we want big areas evacuated, we just say, hey, 27C, it's already set up. And then someone will do the press release, someone will do everything else, and it's already pre-established, rather than trying to make this stuff up on the fly. All right? If we get a small fire, maybe we only want 5 houses evacuated, that's still stuff we got to do on the fly. We're not going to do mass evacuations unless we have to. So usually our fall, wind-driven fires, moving too fast, we want huge areas evacuated. This is what this is really aimed for. This is not your day-to-day fire that we're going to stop at 5, 10 acres.
Didn't these designations come out during the Kincaid fire? And if we were looking at maps at that time, we were seeing these codes, right?
So it started with the Pocket and Tubbs. So during the Kincaid, this was in prototype phase. So yeah, you got a glimpse of it.
Yeah.
They've done some refinements, but yes. And that's why, if something doesn't work well, we can get this changed for next year. You're just not going to see, it was happening during the Tubbs Pocket, it was made up on the fly. If you were listening to the fire in Lake County yesterday, 130-something acres by Hidden Valley Subdivision, very similar to the Vineyard Club, they were using their evacuation zones for Lake County. They were saying them by number. So, and if you guys have that new app called Watch Duty, it was even listing the evacuation zones by number too. So this is a map you can zoom in on your house. Okay, and I know if the fire's on Ridge Oaks Road, it could trigger both zones to be evacuated. This is not perfect, but it's a lot better than we had before. So this is the flyer on the table back there for it in English and Spanish. And then here's the tag to put up when you evacuate, totally optional to put up when you evacuate, so the deputy or whoever knows you're gone already and can spend their time evacuating other people. But this is completely optional.
Where do you put that?
At the base of your driveway. If you wanted to be more discreet and put it on your doorknob, that's totally fine too. I know people are worried about the looter aspect of this. So, but ideally at the bottom of your driveway. Multiple questions, Wes?
On those tags, evacuated tags, if you're on a lane where you've got maybe 2 to half a dozen homes, do you want one on each home or on just the base of the lane?
So we're talking about a shared driveway, multiple houses. So ideally, like on the bottom of your driveway, I think you have all the addresses posted. You would actually hang it on your address number or on your mailbox. That makes sense. If you want to be more discreet, put it on your doorknob. If you want to be super helpful, write us a cardboard sign. Be all evacuated. You know, here's where we're going. But, yeah. So, shared driveways, private roads, you can save the deputies time. And remember, they don't have chainsaws, they come across trees down, they can't get everywhere either. So it just allows them to get more places quicker. Another question?
This map is going to be found in the SoCo emergency app that we usually go to.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So Carleone presented SoCo Adapts. Everything is SoCo. We're no SoCo. So SoCo Adapts, SoCo Emergency. This map has also the alert wildfire cameras like on Geyser Peak, Pine Mountain, and there's more coming up online almost every day. and then this probably will have the fire perimeter. The county SoCo emergency, their Department of Management, will actually put the fire on this map too. But remember, that's a snapshot, usually not accurate, outdated, but it gives you a general idea where the fire's at. And so there'll be road closure points, other things put on this map. So the question was where to find this map. Go to SoCo Emergency. You got to follow the right link or email me. This is not in the PowerPoint, but I can put it in a PowerPoint. Well, it is in the PowerPoint slide. You'll have access to get to it. Okay, so if you got people, vacation rental, people visiting, make sure they know too, especially if they're here during a red flag event. Once the red flag event gets announced, then we take it up to the next level of preparedness. So, any other questions? So I'll go back.
While he does that, I'm just gonna butt in and say that we do have forms on the table to fill out for people that let other people use their homes. So it's a good idea to leave that somewhere where your, renters or people in your house can access it if they get called for evacuation.
Well, I'm just going to talk about a bunch of stuff, okay? So this map here, it might be hard to see, but this is the northeast boundary shown here as orange, and some of the projects we've been working on as a fire district. I'm going to give updates on those, and then I'm going to talk about some of the pending grants we have and other things, to keep this going. Okay, so all this green, that was the 2017 CAL FIRE grant that we just finished up. In your area, it was done a while ago. It was actually some of it done before the Kincaid fire for Coyote Ridge Road, helped stop the Kincaid fire. But that was a roadside clearance grant. So that's what you're seeing here in green. That was the up to 30 feet, limit up trees. Firefighters don't hate trees. Limit up trees, taking out the understory. What I would say fire would have naturally done had we not been putting it out for 100 years. Okay? So that was the roadside clearance grant. That's been done. We need to eventually get that into a maintenance mode, whether we do it as a fire department or volunteer hours or another grant, but somehow keep that maintained now. So that's all this green area. We did take on a couple projects that were donation, private landowner help funding, such as the Hillside Project, which was, gotta get my all directions right, west of Benoni Road, north of Colony Road. That was taking it back to predominantly oak trees, grass. A lot of it was chipped. Matter of fact, Tyson is here, the crew supervisor in the back that did a lot of that work. They pulled everything down to the road, chipped it, and we did a couple burn piles. That is complete. So that would be, now we need to keep that maintained as short grass. We did a project at the end of Colony Road, almost down to the Russian River, where we worked on that hillside there. We didn't get all the piles burned last year, so we need to finish those piles up when it's safe to do. So that was, we called that the Colony Inn project. You guys did community work days last year. Amongst the COVID situation, you guys were the first to do the community work days. It was huge. I would say it's a huge success. Anytime more than one person shows up, it's a success. So that was great. That was your 1 hour. You can claim 1 hour for today, I think. So that was great. That just allows us to do more. And it also maybe trains people how to run a chainsaw, get exposure to it. So that was great. So you guys did a lot of work to maintain and expand and improve. Okay, so that was the community work days. We did do some prescribed burning. It's hard to see here. We did about we wanted to do 160 acres, but parts of it were grazed that we couldn't get it to burn. So that shows you the value of grazing. And plus we were trying to burn in November. It was the Friday after Thanksgiving. We burned about 140 acres, okay? I don't have it on this map. We burned 23 more acres of grass just north of the Colony Road area. Remember it was a very hot day back in July.
That's Benoni Ranch?
Yeah, that's on Benoni Ranch. Okay, we do have plans to burn another large plot on Benoni this winter, this fall, whenever it's favorable to do. It's hard. We burned this and then we had a red flag like a week later. That doesn't do well for me. So it's very hard to plan these things in the winter before it gets too wet. We only have so many hours in a day. So we can't do things that have a great chance of getting out of control. So I think you all appreciate that. So that's what we're looking to do there. I'm going to talk about the grant application for the fire break from Geyser Peak to Pocket Peak, but that's off here to the east. There's potential some landowners want to do some more prescribed burning to the east of you, which I'm in favor of, to maintain that, because that's one of our biggest threats, an east to west moving fire or north to south moving fire, and then the Kincaid did it the other way too. So that is what we have going on. And then you also saw today, well, I forgot to mention the East Fox Ridge. That's a shaded fuel break. We still need to finish that up because of the bird habitat and nesting birds. We didn't get that all the way done. So that'll be a pile and burn project. We'll finish up hopefully this December, January. Probably like 2 weeks more left of work to do there. And then today, part of a different grant I'll talk about. You might have seen some members of the fire department out there clearing along River Road. I'll talk about the different funded project. Yes?
How do you get scheduled for, if you think you have area that would be good to prescribe burn, how do you get scheduled for that?
Okay, so the question is how to get scheduled for prescribed burning, but I'll open that up to any type of project. Ideally, we got a couple of different things going on here. We got the Firewise team, and we got a project list for Firewise. We have the CWPP, though not finalized, it's in a working draft. We got the county CWPP. We got the special tax zone now that's going to provide funding. So my answer is going to be, what I'd like to see is one process, whether it's the special tax zone because it has funding, or we get it in the Firewise hands, but one path forward. But here's what I'm going to tell you. Anytime government, fire department, whether it be CAL FIRE, the fire district, whomever, we can't take on a project just to benefit one property owner. It has to be for the benefit of the community. So it has to have community value if we're going to use taxpayer dollars. So it's got to be vetted through the CWPP process, through the Firewise process, or through the special tax zone board. Okay, so you can call me, we can get it on the radar, but to get it implemented and get it funded, unless you want to fund it as an individual property owner, we got to look at its value to the community.
Well, what if you could share, depending on what it
Oh, absolutely.
costs?
Yeah.
And what would constitute community value? Like if you have dead and dying trees on a hillside that could then take the fire up to the next property, does that constitute?
Well,
And
so
also on a creek?
right, so the community value assessment, our CWPP process got derailed because of COVID. We didn't have all our community meetings to get everyone's feedback. Ideally, you would have brought that up as an idea. Another property owner would have brought up their project as an idea, and then we all would have agreed on it comprehensively as a community. We didn't have that because of COVID. So we need to have a process where everybody views it as that's a value to the community. That's why we're going to do it. Does that make sense? Because otherwise it's just my opinion, but really we need science saying this project, cutting these trees reduces lumber production over there. That's why we're going to cut these trees with taxpayer dollars.
Or if there's dead and dying?
Correct. Yeah. So that's the process we got to use. And that's what the CWPP process is supposed to do. So, but we've been short-circuiting that system a little bit because our fuels crew is not fully funded by tax dollars. It lives grant to grant. So we did donation projects where people donated money, we did the work, or we did like a fee for service where people paid, we did the work. But that was a way to keep the fuels crew employed. Okay? So that's kind of big picture of kind of where we're at with projects. I'm going to talk more about grants and stuff here in a minute. Let me go to the next.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
That I think might tie this. We're looking at possibility of also getting grazing in for helping within the entire community, the ring around the community. Is that something that we could possibly get in one of these grants as well? And also, one other question, what is the benefit of grazing opposed to doing this burning of the underbrush? What's your thoughts on that?
Okay, so it's perfect time. So this morning I got an email about grazing. There's actually a grazing grant right now, and I'm going to tie in the benefits of grazing versus prescribed burning versus whatever other treatment you want to do. So, but just to get to the funding part, if you guys are interested in grazing, and I know there's some folks that may be, if you can get a couple properties together through the Sonoma Resource Conservation District, they have grant funding available to cover down here 50 to 80% of the grazing cost. Okay, so I just got this morning. So that's kind of stuff that just pops up, is opportunities like this. So that's why having these projects identified ahead of time, then a grant opportunity pops up, something pops up, it's like, okay, we got the problem, now we just found a solution. Okay, someone comes to me and says, hey, we got free grazing, and then I email 1,000 people, I get 1,000 emails back. It's very hard to manage projects like that. We need the community to say, this is the project we want to do. So that is an opportunity right now for the Sonoma Resource Conservation District. If you guys want to look at like a 50-50 match or so on grazing. Let me finish out about grazing versus prescribed burning. All these types of land management, whether it be weed eater, goats, sheep, burning, it's all good. It's managing the vegetation to reduce fire risk. Keep the fire on the surface of the earth, out of the trees, which then reduces ember production. Okay, that's what we want to do. So grazing has value because, like I just said, there's very few windows of opportunity to burn with the wind conditions, with firefighter availability. So I can't burn 20,000 acres a year safely. I can burn it, just not safely. Okay? So we need every approach. And just like we did the roadside clearance, we need now a maintenance approach to that. And so that's maybe better to do a chipper method on. But grazing specifically, it's much safer to do. By houses, you don't have smoke impact, you don't have the risk of embers. We're doing a prescribed burn. So I see grazing as just a good way to maintain, or where fire is not feasible to burn, a great way to start that reset process. You're still gonna need, and this is a project the fuels crew is gonna be doing with Hillsburg City. They just grazed around the Villa Chanticleer. You can go look at that, it was in the paper. The fuels crew is going in this Monday now and limbing up trees, taking out stuff that was left behind by the animals. Just like up here on the hillside, we did grazing with Senator McGuire last year on the freeway. You can see what that looks like. You need then mechanical to go back in and do something. So I know there's been mastication work done in the Vineyard Club. We've done prescribed burning. You guys have seen grazing on the Benoni Ranch and other isolated parts, such as Van's property. It'd be nice just to get all these types of veg management in play. And year one, maybe we burned, but then we followed up with grazing, or we grazed and then cut the lower limbs. It's just a great maintenance tool. The more we can get back to oaks, and mainly deciduous oaks with grass, less embers, less heat, build your house right, retrofit your house, we're in a much better spot, in my opinion. So that hopefully answered the question about fire versus grazing, a grazing opportunity here, and then a question.
Can you apply for permanent fencing? Can you apply for grants for grazing?
I don't know. So this question is about permanent fencing for grazing. So that USDA, U.S. Department of Ag, maybe? I don't know it that well. This one here, I don't believe has money for like permanent fencing. They bring in temporary fencing?
I think NRCS has some permanent fencing for.
Yeah, bring up a guest speaker.
Yes, through NRCS, they do have money for fencing. The problem is the reimbursement rate by the federal government is so low because our costs in this area, California in general, West Coast, is so much more. So if you can do that cost share and work within the amount of reimbursement you get from the federal government, that works. If not, we're still looking at other ways for people to either repair fencing on properties where they've let the maintenance go, or build permanent fencing so that the maintenance goes on in the future.
Can I just say that we have 20 people in our community, 20 colleagues, that have already shown expressed interest coming together as a community to graze. If any other people are interested in being added to that list, please email Terry, because we're working on it, and we'll work on trying to get this as a community grant as well. So,
Goats and sheep?
pardon?
Is it goats and sheep?
That actually depends on where the property is. We've done some research on that with Sarah Keyser and some people, and it depends. If you're way up on the high ranch up on the top, you know, you've got mountain lion issues, you might want heavier cattle up there grazing, but down where we are, we could probably do a mix of goats and sheep and things like that. So they will bring in what is necessary for that area. And that's all the things we're looking into right now, but we just want to have an idea on how many in total, what are the properties that are willing to, you know, come in on this. There might be some fees. We're obviously not going to get 100% covered by land, but if the more properties we have and the more it benefits the community, the more we're going to be able to pull this together and be in the long run cheaper for everyone. And also help everybody happy as well. So just Terry, email Terry or me, because we just need to get you on this. Okay? Thanks.
I would love to see goats or sheep, like, I mean, we could do it year round, but just, you know, they just migrate or get, you know, we could almost employ them year round. Just maintaining everything, it'd be great. Okay, I'm gonna go on talking about other things we got going, and a lot of times this is gonna, you know, we're gonna keep getting stuff done, but this is behind the scenes how we're getting funding for it, okay? So, right now I'm in my CAL FIRE uniform today, so as the fire district, we applied to CAL FIRE for another fire prevention grant. That's what funded the roadside clearance grant back in 2017. This grant, we should hear about it in this month of August 2021. It has 3 parts: dead or dying tree removal, which will be all of the Northeast Cope area. And I'll talk about how much, well, let me introduce them all and then I'll show maps and I'll talk about funding for this. It has the fuel break between Geyser Peak, Typo, and Pocket Peak. And then a third component, not directly a benefit to you, is a shaded fuel break at the Hillsburg Transfer Station, which is on Alexander Valley Road, the dump. And that's our plan to build like a fuel break around the city of Hillsburg in cooperation with the city of Hillsburg, which is why we're involved on Fitch Mountain as the fire district. So, dead or dying tree removal and the shaded fuel break. Well, first off, here's the whole map. It's confusing, so let me just skip right to the Northeast Geyserville piece. So, this purple line here is the Cope boundary. Now, it's an expanded Cope boundary. It's called the treatment influence zone. So the work we're gonna do is gonna benefit that entire area. Specifically, here's the Geyser Peak to Pocket Peak fuel break, which is that prominent ridge, not the Ridge Oaks Ridge or where Harris lives, but the next ridge over, Pocket Ranch. A ridge that we've tried to open up on during the Pocket Fire. CAL FIRE is gonna work along the access road to Geyser Peak. We'll pick it up at the Geyser Peak access road and take it all the way north to Pocket Peak. And then during the fire, we're just gonna need to tie it into the creek, bulldoze down that. There's actually an old road there, or maybe that's a future grant we do. So that's part of this grant. So that hopefully works for supporting prescribed burning to the east of you, or trying to hold that ridge from a, you know, I hate to say, less than extreme fire situation. And then that whole entire area is then up for dead and dying tree removal. So $150,000 for dead and dying tree removal. So we know it's not going to cover every dead and dying tree. So we're going to have to prioritize what trees we do, and the criteria I'm using to do that. Well, we're maybe going to inventory every possible tree that's dead, dying, or in some state eventually needs to be removed. It'd be great just to inventory it all, and that's what Kerry Glockner hopefully will be doing for us as a contractor. We'll get all the trees inventoried, but the priority is going to be on trees that could fall into a road. So if the tree's 100 feet tall, it's 50 feet from the road, that's going to be a priority tree, okay? So that's going to be probably the first pass. We've got to have landowner permission, and then how do we pay for this? $150,000, it's a match. It's 75% landowner, no, other way around, 75% grant, 25% landowner, okay? So if we can do this through the CAL FIRE contract, if they allow it to happen, when we sign the contract for the grant, how I would see it going down is we've identified that as a tree that meets criteria for this priority phase of tree removal. You find the contractor, get it all set up, just like with the SNOCO adapts, turn in the cost, the fire district through the grant will reimburse for 25% of that. Okay, so if you want more trees removed that aren't part of the grant, that's all part of your total cost with the contractor. Maybe we can make it cheaper if one contractor does everything, but otherwise it's the fire district putting out a request for bids and doing all that type of stuff and hiring somebody maybe you don't want to have work on your property and all that type of situation. So that's how I'm envisioning this tree removal going down.
The decision maker is the fire district, not the county, not the state, not FEMA. So at least we have someone directly that we can go to that we see the face.
Right. This is funding from this CAL FIRE. If this is approved, funding will go from CAL FIRE to the fire district. The fire district manages the project.
How do you assess then what's the next priority after, if it's gonna fall on the road? Like, or you might tell a partial road that's gonna be a fire road from the creek up to the back of the three properties.
Well, first off,
dead trees.
yeah, first off, I'd like to, so the question is how we're gonna do future prioritization of tree removal. So, first off, I'd love to get all the trees inventoried now.
I
Which-
see it on one of those lists we were requested to do.
Okay, and I think we were working on that. But you gotta think, if we're open to all this area, there's gonna be maybe a lot of trees up here too that that are not by roads. So we wanna inventory all the trees, but that decision of what we do next won't be me. That's gonna be whether it be the Firewise board, whether it be the special tax board, whether it be the, it can't just be my opinion. So, I don't even know right now how many trees we're gonna need to remove just that could fall on a road, on a county road, or a private road, or a shared driveway. I don't know, I don't even know the magnitude of this problem yet. So, we're gonna have to kinda, to be determined a little bit. Margie?
So how do you want us to do these counts? How can we ID them for you so we can tell you how many trees there are?
Well, there was an initial, I think, attempt, and Terry was working on it, right, to try to go and identify all these trees. I mean, the history here is, there was a meeting I couldn't make last year where I think PG&E came out and walked through with PG&E, like how many would PG&E be willing to do because of power lines? I think that went nowhere, so now we're on to writing a grant for this. So, we do not have a good appraisal of how many trees we need to take out. So, if you guys can give us an idea, that's what Terry was working on, but I think what's gonna ultimately need to happen is, Gary Glockner was flying the drone last year to map. We're gonna have him finish flying the drone to map, and it'll identify the trees that are dead or dying. And then we're gonna have to go out and do, it's gonna be complex, but like exactly the location where it's at. Is it gonna fall on a house? Is it gonna fall on power lines? Does it need a crane? Do we pile and burn it? How do we chip it? All these things, it gets very complex, just like the SoCo Adapt grant gets complex. So that's what's tricky. So please start inventory on your property if you like, but ultimately we're gonna have to do something where it's standardized approach.
So what I just sort of was thinking is I have I have parcel maps by small sections of the CWPP area, and maybe I'll just break those into the neighborhoods basically and send them out, and you can take your parcel and put your trees where they are, what state they're in, whatever, and if there's, and just basically put the information for your lot and send it back in. And then we'll at least have a graphic of what's on your property and what you want done. So,
But if that fails, we'll never find them again. We need to tag it or dot it with a color or something, so you will know what we're talking about.
Yeah, and that's probably, I think if we get this grant and the funding's available, we're gonna probably have to spend some of the money to go around and physically document every tree. At least along the roads, that's the first phase.
That's priority one,
Yeah.
the roads.
What kind of time frame? Because my neighbors are not cutting down dead trees, hoping for this grant.
Yep. So that's just, I'm gonna talk honestly here, that's the grant mentality going around. Just like when we announced the roadside clearance grant, people stopped maintaining their roads and we got stuck with a bunch of extra work. So, I mean, let's just say that whatever game gets played, it's either gonna hurt us or help us. So if people aren't doing it because they're waiting for the grant and the grant doesn't get awarded, we're not any better off. If you wanna wait and we hope we don't get a fire and get to it before the grant, I mean, I'm trying to do everything I can do to help people out, and I can't control that piece of it. People are the hardest thing to control. I'm not even gonna try. So, it's unfortunate, and there's no, so then people say, well, can you go talk to my neighbor to force him to cut a tree down? Government only forces laws. And so for me to go talk to your neighbor, I'm kind of going out on a limb a little bit. So
So to speak.
yeah, so to speak. So that's where it gets tricky. As soon as I get burned on that, then, there's not much sorry, I just advanced it. So that's the issue with people not now or waiting for a grant. And so one option is I just keep all this stuff super secret. I thought about that. But that's not a good way of doing business either. Because I need community to understand why we're doing these grants, because it's for community benefit, not just one landowner benefit.
Marshall, is the county cutting some of the trees that are on the road, the dead ones? Because they came out just spur of the moment and started to cut a big tree on Vineyard Road. Was that the county that they just initiated on the road?
Yeah, so the county did one on River Road too. I don't know, Carlene, was that leftover money from the other grant that did that, or?
I don't think so, do you know?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It could just been part of the, overall attempt that TPW is making to prioritize roads at high risk. So I'm not sure, I could follow up if you really want to know. And also just to add confusion, the county also, we have a dead tree grant as well from FEMA. So Marshall and I will have to talk, but we might be able to increase value because the stuff that you guys are doing, we might be able to combine efforts on this. And it's a secret.
Marshall was going out to block by a PG&E contractor just below our, I had to drive all the way around the other way.
Yeah, we don't, yeah. So if you think that I know everything that's going on, no way in heck. So the PG&E contractors, I rarely know what they're doing. I have a pretty good relationship with the county roads folks, but I don't know everything they're doing. And like an example, we were doing clearance on Geyserville Avenue, and then PG&E decided to work on their gas line. So, we're pretty flexible, we can move, but the coordination is very hard. Yeah. So I just see the problem, dead trees along roads. Technically, that's county roads' job on county roads. But I submitted the grant. If county roads does all the county road parts, fine. I'm sure we can find enough dead trees on private roads we'll go to then. So I'm pretty confident we can spend the money. So that's why I went for it. So if someone else does county roads, we'll move on to private roads only.
Do you have to be dead or dying, or maybe bad, non-native, like bigger pines?
Well, I think foothill pines are native. They're invasive, just like the Douglas firs are just taking over and changing fire behavior. But right now it's dead dying. That's the priority. Honestly, what's happened is, the exclusion of fire, the hands-off approach to land management has gotten us to where we're at. It's like painting the Golden Gate Bridge. I got to focus on the real rusty parts right now before we start talking about changing the color of red. That's a lower priority for me. Any other? Okay, so that is the pending CAL FIRE grant. Best case, I'll know about this by the end of the month. Because of bird nesting season and everything else, by the time we sign the contract with the state, if we don't start cutting trees by February 15th, that's the start of bird nesting season, the environmental review. We might not be able to then cut for a whole year until August 15th, because that's the end of bird nesting season. Okay? I try to find loopholes, I try to push the envelope sometimes, but if the fire district gets sued by someone that's worried about birds, for sure we're not doing until August 15th. And I might be done. So it's just the game we got to play. It's just what it is. So if I can do at an appropriate cost, make sure there's no birds in some of these trees, and we can cut them in the summer next year, I'll do everything I can do to make this happen. Okay? The fire break, because of the environmental review, and we're going to use equipment on this, you won't see that till a year from now. That'll be next winter. I don't want to start a fire up there, so that's going to, and then hopefully it doesn't I don't wanna say I don't want it to rain, but we need the right weather to now work up there in the winter too. So that's all this trickiness about trying to get these projects implemented. So that's where we're going, and that ultimately, if you notice, it's called phase 1 because I want to start doing much more of this with the ultimate goal to try to do very large prescribed burns to the east of us and to the north of us to manage these big open areas, to clear out these invasive trees, manage the vegetation, take advantage of what's burned in all these fires we've had to get in a better cycle. Okay, so that's the CAL FIRE grant that we're waiting to hear from. Then what you saw this morning on River Road, that was the Geyserville MAC, the Geyserville Alexander Valley MAC. That's casino mitigation funds. The MAC group allocated $100,000 to the fire district. This is at the point that the fuels crew did not have long-term funding. So they said, hey, we'll get you guys $100,000, awesome, to keep the crew going. And so that's to work along county roads. So that's the Geyserville Avenue work here to the south of us. That's why they're working on River Road today. And then Walling Road, there's some other ones, but I only noted those because the other ones aren't in your area. So we have work to do that, okay? So I could go into all the logistics of the fuels crew and kind of how things happen or why they're on River Road today, but that would take like another hour. We're trying to use these funds to work on county roads. So this is technically where county should be doing work, but we're helping out locally with doing that. So that's MAC funding, okay, municipal advisory. Okay, so we do have that funding, that's in progress. And I'll just say in summary, you'll probably see this work being done mainly on the weekends right now, or if the crew is gonna work on red flag days, this is the project they're gonna do because we're gonna have a water truck there, we're gonna not work late in the day, and so they'll be close to where if there is a little fire that starts, they'll jump on it right away or can get help right away. I'm not gonna say we're gonna work on every red flag day, but if we do on these, like a lightning red flag day, it'll most likely be on this project. So River Road hopefully is done in a month, and I think that's, well, I don't, what time, we're already looking at an hour and a half, right? Or 2 hours. So let me just call it good there. I'll answer questions. And then you saw about the grazing, just a quick review on that's the special tax boundary. So we're gonna need to convene the group that allocates these funds to talk about how this funding will be used, but that is the special tax zone. So there needs to be work done in this area, which aligns with the CAL FIRE grant that's pending, but that's a special tax zone. And then my last slide, if you guys haven't seen this, this is just the fire history of northern Sonoma County, which, you guys are right there, okay? So, and most people don't even remember the 2004 Geyser fire or the Thanksgiving 2013 McKay fire. Everyone, I think, knows about the pocket, the Kincaid, and then actually there's the wall bridge on the other side of the fire district. So, sometimes it works good for the grants to say we burn frequently, but that doesn't make you guys.
What's the plain pink?
This one?
Yeah.
That's the fire district boundary. Margin?
Is the chipper only being used by the fuels crew now?
Okay, and I think Terry was going to talk about the Free County chipper, and Carly and Saffron can talk as well. So, the fuel crew actually has 2 physical chippers in their possession. We call it the red chipper and the yellow chipper.
Okay.
So we do have 2 chippers. The county offers a free chipper program. Okay, so we're telling everyone, sign up with the county, sign up with the county. The county's been very gracious. They've subcontracted back to the fire district for most of the chipping in northern Sonoma County. So now we get reimbursement. Remember, the fuels crew is not taxpayer funded. We get reimbursement back to go do quote unquote free chipping, but it's not the fire district really doing chipping, but they see our trucks, see our chippers, and they think it's us. Really, this is Supervisor Bull or the Board of Supervisors. This is County of Sonoma credit. Okay? You just see us do it, which is great. Just like you see us do the inspections for defensible space, that's where the county funded as well. So that's what gets tricky, but it's a good cooperation of a county program with local control. Okay? So that is our free chipper program. But because I just showed you the special tax zone, if you live in the special tax zone, we're gonna come chip your stuff. I mean, you guys are paying extra, so we're gonna chip. So we're offering quote unquote a free chipper program if you're paying the special tax. So what gets hard is we don't have a sign-up program for that. We don't always patrol the area to check. That was our thought. Or it'd be like every Wednesday morning we'd go through like the garbage service and chip. Well, none of this stuff really has worked out, so it's coming down. Just email me or Tyson in the back, and we'll get out there and chip it when we can. Tyson right here, that's the fuel crew supervisor. So,
Thank you.
And Tyson can talk about the crew. None of them are full-time employees. Greater than 50% are JC students. They start school this week. It's a 10-hour work day. It's miserable work. They've all had poison oak. So sometimes they avoid the poison oak to come back later. A great relationship for the goats. Goats do the poison oak. And we'll follow up, or they'll follow up. So it's mainly students. Some of them do want to be firefighters. A lot of them do have training in forestry, watershed, and so they also are protecting the environment when they're out there too. So they know about birds, and they're doing that. They're just not technically a bird expert. So
we have some knowledge. Pretty diverse crew, like Chief was saying. Mostly students at the JC, natural resource management, study natural resource management or forestry. Yeah, really tough work. We're out there in the heat, in the rain, steep terrain. Yeah, we have a good solid crew numbers right now, but it is fire season, so we lost some in the fire, and then school's starting back up, so we lost some just going back to school. But yeah, pretty solid. Great work. Thank you very much.
I think Larry has a question, and then maybe Margie, but Larry.
Would you quickly address the status of the annexation of the geysers, Fitch Mountain and Miller Creek into northern Sonoma County, in particular, the most important issue, making sure that we've assured long-term funding through a tax transfer?
All right, so
Marshall, just a sec. Let me just add one thing about the chipper thing, and then I'll be done. The county chipper is, you don't fill out an application anymore like you did and send it in. It's all online. You have to apply for it there, and it's easy. And and they do it by zones, so they're gonna, you know, when Geyserville a Geyserville day comes, then everybody that signed up will get done that day. And I see tons of files in the neighborhood right now. So we don't know when the chipper's going to be available to come. So it's always a good idea to use the county if you can. We're paying for that too with our taxes. So, and it's super easy. You don't have to do anything. Just go online and fill out the application.
SoCo reported is just Google SoCo reported, SOCO reported. And that will take you to that survey where you fill in your information.
And then real quick on one more thing too, for the Firewise stuff, Terry wants to report back on how many tons per acre, or how many tons are chipped and things. That's all stuff we need to do a better job of capturing too, for Firewise.
Right. And I'm going to be sending out something about that for you to log all that stuff. I think you know that, but yeah, I'll keep up with that, because everybody needs to start keeping track.
And we do track that to the county chipper, so we should be able to get some of that fee.
How do you measure how much you have?
By either, I can send a little thing. You can either do it by semi-load truck, you do a quarter acre, any measurement that, some dump truck, semi-truck, by acre, by cubic yards. So if you can picture what you did, like that. Yep.
I think there was a couple other questions.
Yeah.
I'll answer Larry's.
If you use the county chipper program, is it accurate that you get two 2-hour sessions and then that's it?
It says you get 2 hours at a time. Well, although there's also a video on there of a guy telling you about it, and he says 3 hours. So maybe there's a little flex.
It used to be 3 hours. I think they tried to cut it back this year a little bit.
Okay.
But generally speaking, we will try to work with you as much as we can. But, there are a lot more people complaining about, I signed up for the county shipper and it took 3 months to get there. That's why we cut it back to 2 hours, because it's a countywide program, so the more people we can get going, the better. But sometimes we'll work with you. Best way to ask questions is through email, which go to Tyler.
So I think tomorrow, the Geyserville chipper has 3 county-funded jobs to chip, and they'll have to go to the Vineyard Club for the rest of that one. So, get it in with the county, but we're gonna be through the Vineyard Club too. Just all these little nuances of it, we're trying to do the right thing, but then when we show up at 7:30 in the morning, we get complaints too, so. It's hard. It's hard to do this, so. Larry's question was about the annexation, which I think everyone probably is a little bit aware of it, so I'll just give an update, but the Northern Sonoma County Fire District, this pink area, working with the County of Sonoma, is looking to annex the area to the east of us, which is the geysers, the southern part of the Dry Creek Valley, which includes Mill Creek, that's also called Sodiomi, and then Fitch Mountain. Part of Fitch Mountain is inside the Hillsburg city limits, but there's the east half of it is not. And so those are all currently what's called County Service Area 40. Those property taxes go to the County of Sonoma, and then some of them come back to pay Hillsburg City, to go to Fitch Mountain, to go to Sodiomi area, and then we get a per call payment to go to the geysers, which is less than $5,000 a year. I don't even think we billed this year at all, because it's so minimal. We're looking to annex that. And the key of that is there's roughly about $1.5 million from these County Service Area 40 areas that goes to the county, and about, I'm going to say with confidence, less than $300,000 comes back to somewhere in northern Sonoma County, whether it comes to us as the fire district or the city of Hillsburg. So the direct benefit is more funding, which we want to put towards maintaining vegetation fuels reduction, have some taxpayer dollars fund the fuel crew, more mitigation, prevention, preparedness is the emphasis of that funding. So we're looking optimistic that maybe 1.2 million of the 1.5 million we'll be able to get to the short term, and then eventually work our way up to receiving all 100% of that, which, like I said, is probably 1.5 million now, but it goes up every year as property taxes goes up. So Mill Creek and this area to the west of us, just like you guys in the pocket and the Kincaid affected other parts of, affected you too. A lot of property loss in Mill Creek. So property taxes are down out there, but as that comes back, those increased property taxes, our portion will come back to the fire district. So every one of these areas has some uniqueness to it. Fitch Mountain, not a lot of calls for service, medical aids here and there. Right next to the city of Hillsburg, their needs, they want inspection enforcement of defensible space every year, enforcement, which I think is similar to what you guys are looking for. The geysers, there's only so many buildings, and I'm pretty sure they don't want government showing up every year. So that's going to be a different service delivery model out there, where we're doing prescribed burning, where we're doing fuel breaks, where we're trying to stop fires from happening, or if they do happen, they're not as bad, or we have a better chance of stopping them. And then Mill Creek, Sodiomi is also kind of an in-betweener between Fitch Mountain and the geysers. So we think we can do a better service delivery model than's been provided, with the ultimate goal that we reduce it or prevent as many emergencies as we can. Knowing we can't prevent all of them. If you guys don't know, tomorrow's the anniversary of last year's lightning storm. So the lightning's a great example of something we can't prevent, at least in the short term. And so we want to prevent, but also then just be the best prepared we can be for that emergency with responsive decision making as well.
Marshall,
So,
it's like every 2 years, we're ready for one, every 2 years.
No, we don't want it.
It looks like.
Yeah, no, the stats are not good. So I hope that answered Larry's questions about annexation and property taxes.
I'd also like to mention that this is going to make, first of all, Northern Sonoma County Fire District is far and away the largest fire district in all of Sonoma County. This is almost going to double the size of it. And part of the whole process, I think, that the Fire District Board is doing is making sure that we ensure the independence of Northern Sonoma County Fire District going forward as continuing consolidation occurs, with fire districts within this county.
Totally agree. Fire history, if you want to talk about it, 2004, that's the Geyser fire. It came out of Lake County, but that was Friday at 5. Did most of its damage. It was done by Saturday by 6 p.m. I'm not going to talk about McCabe. I'll talk about the Pocket fire. Okay? Many other fires going on at that same time. You can kind of see it went in a couple different directions, and most of what it burned just because there wasn't firefighters available. It wasn't that hard of a fire to fight, there just wasn't firefighters. But then you look at what McCabe did, right? It starts at 9:30 at night. It's down to 128 by, I think, 4 o'clock at the latest that next morning. So they're just moving faster, and then the rest of what McCabe did was just because we never could get around here. There wasn't enough firefighters again, it was just really remote up there. So that's why you're seeing it on the Dixie fire now, you saw last year on the Wall Bridge. Firefighters trying to reopen fire roads, trying to prep county roads to stop fires. We are not able to do that during a fire. So all this stuff the field crew does, all this stuff we want to do, no, by no means is it going to stop every fire, but it's going to give us a better chance, and eventually, maybe we get to large grazing area, large prescribed burning, we can get to all the other trees we need to get to, we can get to changing the color of the Golden Gate Bridge. But we just got to prioritize, and so roads to get us in, get you out, stop, slow a fire, that's been our priority. We're going to start doing these middle of nowhere fuel breaks, just because in our area, we get these fires in the middle of nowhere. And if an air tanker can hold it, 80% of it, and we can get the rest of the 20% where it burned over it, or we only got spot fires out here, at least it's, I'm never going to say we're going to stop every fire, just like we're not going to prevent every fire, but we're just changing the odds a little bit more in our favor. The other option, Santa Barbara just put out a study. At the rate we're burning in California, in 10 years, they'll all be burned. And so the nature will start managing manage the vegetation for us. But how many lives, how many houses, how much stress, how much deterioration in quality of life is going to happen in that period. So what keeps me going is feeling we're making a difference, making small progress. And so that's what this is all about. The grants, all this stuff is hard to do it, but we have no other long-term sustained funding to make this stuff happen. So. Community chipper days is another option too if you guys want chipping done. So when you guys pitch in some hours like you did, we can get both chippers out there to do that. We did some community chipper days last year too. I think overall, man, there's a lot of good stuff. It's not just what we can do as fire departments and public safety. And you guys have heard me say this before, it's all of us working together. It's really where we need to be. So the more we can work together, that's going to make a difference. That's all I had, Terry, unless we want to talk more, if there's questions.
Any more questions, Marshall? We're good? Okay, I just, there's just one little thing that I wanted to show you. That John Mills is the guy that came out with this card. You can order one for $10. And this is just to give the first responders and the firemen a clue as to what to expect on your property in the smoke before they have to go down along property, whether or not they can turn around, how much water storage is there, various things to fill out that you can leave for them when you evacuate if you want to. If you want them to come to your property and let them know that it's safe to be there, having one of these is a good idea. You can buy them, they cost $10, we'll ship them to you. SherwoodFire.com is where you get them. And this is just, is that what it says? SherwoodWildfire.com. The reason this came out is because some people manually made these for the firemen in some of these last big fires, and it was such a big help to the firemen that they just, it's like, oh, well, more people need to do this. So it's a good idea. It's a helpful tool for the first responders and firemen.
If you're selling them for $10, And remember, best case, it's a local firefighter. Remember, my point of view is at least you know one firefighter by name, but we got to play down to the least common denominator where it's LA County. It's even other firefighters in our county don't even know where Geyserville's at. So this just gives them, make sure, as Carleon would say, make sure it like invites firefighters in. It's like the big stake sitting on the front lawn. It's, hey, it's safe to come to my house, or this is, you know, what I have there.
What's the propane tank? Where they are?
There's instructions that come when you buy this, but yeah, basically.
Yeah, when you go on to
hazards.
order it, you'll see that it's all filled, how it's all filled out. I was kind of surprised by this one.
It's hazards.
It's what kind of fuels do you have? Are you on propane? Are you PG&E, gas, or whatever?
Big things too, if you guys have like water systems, you know, or sprinklers to turn on, if that's, you know, I know people are installing, not in Vineyard Club itself, but elsewhere installing sprinklers. Anything that's specific about your property you want us to know about, you fill this out ahead of time, that way you're not doing it during the panic of evacuation, you'll leave it there, because we do show up and your PVC pipe might be burned through and we have no way to turn it off, and we want to turn it off, but we don't know how your system works. So anything you can do to help us like that, you just never know what we need to know during a fire. So we're obviously doing the pre-attack maps, the neighborhood information maps, all that stuff's great too. This is all working together, but this is the firefighter who knows nothing. Fire's here right now, it's 2 a.m. in the morning. Rather than them trying to figure everything out, you're giving the information to them.
And personally, the people are concerned about letting people know that they're evacuated. I think out here in the country, it's not the same concern as it is in a condensed area. We're going to have roadblocks at the beginning of the road. You know, it's a long way for looters to travel in the thick smoke, and they don't know where they're going either or what to expect when they get there. So, I don't know. Personally, I just don't see it. I think that it's better to, you know, to help the firefighters than worry about the possibility of somebody getting in your house.
During the pocket fire, when I was here, every day there were U.S. Marshals patrolling the entire community of evacuation. So the moment an area is evacuated, there are law enforcement officials sent in to protect the area and to patrol.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. So, yeah.
I was just gonna say, another thing is that the evacuation zones are already public knowledge too, so.
They're already what?
They're already public knowledge.
Oh, right, okay, good point. Good point. Anyways, I'm gonna fill this out for mine.
I have a question for Marshall. So regarding propane tanks during an evacuation, like the barbecue tanks and so forth, what do you want us to do with them?
The question is propane tanks for evacuation, so we're mainly talking the small 5-gallon ones, like barbecue. If you have the time, put them away from your house, but it's not absolutely critical.
Put them all together in one outside location?
Correct.
That won't burn.
Right. So the worst case would be that they get a bunch of heat and either they blow up, which is dangerous to us or could damage your house, or as they off gas, when they heat, they off gas, instead of blowing up, they let their gas inside go. That catches fire, and now all that heat is gonna ignite your house, ignite your deck. So if you put them somewhere a ways,